So hello and welcome, and I'm your host Constantin Kogan, and we're here at Holistic Investments. And today I have a special guest, Brock Pierce, who is a presidential candidate in 2020, who's been a founder of USDT, one of the biggest also funds in the industry, one of the biggest projects in the industry, and generally there's an epicenter around Brock, who's helping, who's founding the Bitcoin Foundation, and who's always ready to help the community and spread the word around the cryptocurrencies. So really pleasure to have you here, Brock, today.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Just one correction: I was not the or a founder of the Bitcoin Foundation. I was elected to the board to represent the industry members in 2014. And then by the board was made chairman, and the job that I was given on behalf of the industry was to distribute the authority of the Bitcoin Foundation, the original organization that kind of took over for Satoshi. We handed the keys off to MIT, and did what we could to support the emergence of other trade organizations, lobbyists, and we, for the most part, made the Bitcoin Foundation irrelevant, which was the job. Distribute the authority, spread it around.
Got it. So the official title was a director of Bitcoin Foundation, right? 2014.
Well, chairman. Elected as director and then made chairman. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for this correction. So I think we're just really quickly start with all the legal disclaimers. So this content is for informational purposes only. You should not consider any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. And now we can talk a lot about not only cryptocurrencies, but generally like what's happening lately in the space in terms of states adoption, right? We've heard recently the news about the Bitcoin accepted as a legal tender in El Salvador. And I know you've been there with the delegation and you spoke to the president, you advise the government there. So I would love to hear, I think this is the hottest news lately, and I would love to hear your opinion. What's your take on this legal tender as a first state is accepted as a legal tender? And do you foresee any next state that is issuing this news?
Yeah, so we did lead a delegation, an official delegation to El Salvador. We were invited by the El Salvadorian ambassador to the United States. She came over to my house in Washington, D.C. and said, yeah, we would love to bring, love for a group of experts to come down and understand what's going on here and help us roll this out. It's a massive initiative. And so we were the first official visitors on behalf of the El Salvadorian government since COVID. So very interesting. This was the first official delegation to visit El Salvador since COVID. So it's kind of cool to ring that bell. But what I'd say is, I'm a trust but verify sort of person. And what I saw is that the president and his government, this is the real deal. They care about, service. They recognize that technology is a tool for positive transformation. They got 70% of the population is unbanked. And so this is a tool that can deliver near immediate financial inclusion. They're giving $30 of Bitcoin to every citizen. And so really exciting to see that. And keep in mind that El Salvador runs on the US dollar. And so they don't have a central bank that can, create money. And so for them, there's not a lot of downside in adding Bitcoin, which they really view the currency, I think, is the current account, the checking account, the medium of exchange. And Bitcoin really is the new savings account. And I think that parallel structure is quite possibly what we're going to see replicated around the world. I think that this could kick off a chain reaction of many other nations following suit. Places like El Salvador, historically, it hasn't worked for them. There's not a period of time in recent history where it's working for them. They're ready for some real change. And seeing what they've done with healthcare, what we can do if we bring foreign direct investment to their volcanoes to create geothermal for Bitcoin mining operations, but also to provide abundant, cheap, clean energy to the people. I think there's a lot of incredible stuff we can do. I encourage you to take a trip down there. I think you're going to see an announcement soon of a big event, similar to, maybe not as big as what was in Miami, but a very large event. And I encourage everyone to come down. We would love to see this as a success story. El Salvador, I believe, already has the highest Bitcoin adoption of any country in the world. And this is just the beginning of things rolling out. It is going to be the first country in the world where Bitcoin adoption is, nearing 100%. And for those of you that care about Bitcoin, let's make this a success. They need our help. They need support. And so I'm in conversations with ambassadors and other heads of state with about 25, 30 other nations right now. And I can tell you there's a great deal of interest. But their following is really going to depend upon what happens in El Salvador. If El Salvador ends up being a disaster or a flop, countries are going to think twice about it. If El Salvador is a success, they're going to be rushing in. And just for those of you that don't speak Spanish, El Salvador, the translation, El means the, Salvador means savior. And so, in this instance, Satoshi might be the savior, and it's starting in El Salvador. So come check it out.
That's an amazing connotation, yes. So thank you. I mean, it's the smallest nation in Central America, right? And it's the first to actually accept Bitcoin as a legal tender. So this is impressive. Their population was like 6.5 million people. And they're, as you mentioned, they're going to give away $30 to each adult in their country. I think that's already an impressive. It's like, the concept, universal basic income concept, which is important. And I think we should support it. So probably I will ask you, just to close this topic, what would you advise for people besides going there physically, people who probably have some restrictions due to COVID, in some countries. So maybe some other ways you can support the movement in El Salvador.
Well, there's a lot of things. So first, find the thing that you're passionate about. Your purpose and your passion are often connected. So go do that thing that you enjoy, right? If you're trying to pick up social media followers, maybe give $100 worth of Bitcoin, to, whoever does something in El Salvador, create a game, spread the word. They need support right now. Just our talking about this is helping. We're creating awareness. Perhaps there's a cause that you care about in El Salvador. Let them know that you'll make a donation if you can send it to them in Bitcoin. If you're into surfing, take a trip down there and check out Bitcoin Beach. If you have a product or service, that you think is relevant, try and find some people to roll out those Bitcoin ATMs. Wallet adoption. Again, media. I mean, there's so many things that one can do. Try to do that thing that makes you feel best, right? That makes you feel good. And also start thinking about, because it's not just El Salvador, where else can we do something? Start thinking about this in the context of your home nation, or maybe the nation of your ancestors or your family, maybe not even the place in which you live, because El Salvador is not alone. A lot of Central and South America has similar challenges. A lot of the Caribbean has similar challenges. A lot of Africa, a lot of Southeast Asia, even parts of Europe. This is the moment. This is the time, and start thinking about what you can do. Right? The future is going to happen to us, or it's going to happen with us. So let's get involved and go create a future that we all want to live in. And country by country. I like to think of us as the Bitcoin community as almost a nation without borders, and a nation without authority. Right? It's a kind of a decentralized nation, but there's hundreds of millions of us now, and we have maybe $2 trillion. We are a wealthy nation, and we're everywhere. The impact that we're going to be able to make in the world is the sort of thing that can change it all for the better.
Yeah. So have you heard maybe behind the curtains about some tax benefits they're going to implement, and maybe some other countries prepare? And I've heard that Paraguay is also preparing some of the bills to potentially pass the legal tender for voting, right? You know, some other countries, not only as you mentioned, but not only in Central Asia, maybe some other Middle Eastern countries and countries in Africa. So maybe you can reveal some secrets. Who do you consider, if you would bet, like who would you bet on, like the next country to accept it?
Well, there's only so much I can say, but the stuff that's public right now, obviously, is you've got stuff going on in Paraguay. You've got interest in Panama, Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, Brazil. Like, I mean, it's, and those are just the ones that you can kind of look up yourself online. There's a great deal of interest, and there are a number of nations that are going to follow suit as long as things are working. Now, I was just in Monaco, and Monaco didn't, nor does it, have a plan for Bitcoin to be legal tender, but I said it should be. I mean, you're Monaco. Just think about all those big Chinese whales and gamblers that'll come over and fill your casinos, and Monaco historically kind of having been a place of this nature, and the fact that it's a monarchy allows them to act quickly. It's that's just something that I hope that Prince Albert does quickly, because why not? You're part of the European Union. You don't print your own money. Again, I think nations that don't have central banks and don't create their own money are going to be the ones that go first, because why not? There's not really any argument that I can think of that's compelling not to. You're creating a financially inclusive savings account, effectively, to empower your people to buy and hold on to a deflationary asset that appreciates in value over time in countries that historically are normally financially unstable. It seems like a pretty good idea to me.
So we can switch to other part of the world, which is US, which is your, were you also like incredibly active? And again, you were, for someone who were under the rock and don't know your latest career moves, I would say that you were the presidential candidate in 2020. It was a successful campaign, and there was a lot of buzz around it. And people like Andrew Yang, who's also like right now running for mayor in New York, like also supporting a lot of programs. People like the mayor of Miami also supports incredible amount of programs, and they're open-minded. And maybe we can talk a little bit about what's happening, like the latest news in New York and Miami.
Yeah, so Miami, obviously great things happening there. I know all three mayors of Miami, and I've got a very good relationship with Mayor Suarez. We've done Fox News and interviews together and a whole host of stuff, and see each other almost every trip to Miami. He's the real deal. As an elected official, it's amazing. The boldness. Remember, fortune favors the bold. The future, right, belongs to those that have the courage to go do these sorts of things. And so, a big fan of everything going on there. Obviously the biggest conference, like maybe in the world this year, happened. BTC 2021. Thank you, David Bailey and BTC Media, or Bitcoin Magazine, for organizing that, because so many of us have been like trapped in our houses for so long. It's good to see the circuit, or as I like to think, the circus, back on. And so that was great. New York City, Andrew Yang dropped out of the race. He was going to end up in fourth place, and so on election night, which was just a couple weeks ago, he dropped out. I'm a fan of Andrew Yang's, though. I love a lot of his. We share a number of views around things like universal basic income, obviously Bitcoin and otherwise. I really hope that he runs for Congress. I think that he, with his, ideas and his ability to communicate, and the platform that he has with the media, I think that he'd be very effective, in Congress. Kind of like an AOC. pushing, these ideas that I hope and I think many of us share. The guy that did win the election is my good friend, Eric Adams. So remember, he hasn't won the election yet. He won the Democratic primaries.
Yeah.
But in New York City, that is basically the election. I'm also friends with the Republican that won the primary, Curtis Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels. So both candidates are friends of mine. The Republican candidate endorsed me for president now and kind of in the future during the presidential run. And so, and Eric Adams, on election night, said that, he's going to make New York City the Bitcoin capital of the United States. Miami, love what you're doing, but New York is going to, is back. And when he takes office, and I'm pretty sure you can guess where that all came from. And so good things happening in New York. I'm really excited about this. And it's not just those places as well. Wyoming, Wyoming has passed, near 20 laws in favor of technology and recognizing that it is a tool for positive transformation. And as the world is changing, the fossil fuel revenues that they've relied upon are in decline, and they have to find new industries. And this clearly is a very good one, certainly for a liberty leaning state like Wyoming. And it's not just there because of Wyoming's leadership, right? Because of Mayor Suarez, because of soon to be Eric Adams, we're seeing South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, Utah, Alaska, Texas. The list goes on. There are state legislators in, about a third of the states right now that are like, we wish to be a part of this, in the same way that there's, dozens of nations saying we want to be a part of this. And I think we're not far away from that being a majority of the states and a majority of the nations. So really exciting times. It's kind of like back in the early days, it started with academia acknowledging our existence, right? Mm-hmm. Then it became kind of venture capitalists acknowledging our existence. Then it became big tech acknowledging our, financial players. And, kind of the last shoe to drop is the world's governments. And it's happening. That is, we've effectively, all of the major industries that are relevant to us and the work that we're doing, are like, all right, this is the real deal. Now, some people, some of the establishment, wants to protect the status quo, but you can't stop change. Change is inevitable. It's like a wave. You can either pull out your surfboard and get ready to ride it and be the beneficiary of it, or be prepared to get pummeled by it. And so we're ultimately all in this together. And, I'm really glad to see so many of our elected officials and civil servants around the world, choosing to embrace the future. Really excited.
So that's definitely exciting. And I look at what's happening. It's actually reassuring. And maybe also we can talk in a few words about Puerto Rico, which is again where you invest a lot. Not only money, but your hearts and your efforts to make sure that people in Puerto Rico actually adopt not only digital payments or cryptocurrencies, but generally change lives there. I know you participated in a lot of charity organizations. So maybe you can share some latest news, what is happening in Puerto Rico.
Over 1,000, of us in the industry have moved to Puerto Rico. That's a lot of intellectual capital, a lot of social capital, a lot of financial capital that can facilitate big positive change. Sadly, we haven't been able to accomplish much from a legislative perspective, which is slowed down the job creation and the integration of the products and services. And that's because the first governor, Ricky Rosselló, there was these protests that they called the Telegram Gate, which he was on board, but that then paused everything. Then you had another governor in place and then another election. And so we've had political hurdles that have prevented that so far, but the potential is all there. What has happened, to highlight the positive thing locally, is there are a lot of young people that started buying cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of people that have invested in cryptocurrency in Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans that have been, big winners financially, as a result of this. Though with all of the brain trust that's there, the things that could happen in Puerto Rico could happen really, really quickly. So I'd say all of the groundwork is laid. Now it's just a matter, for the word go. I've got a very good relationship with the Puerto Rican government. I'm very active philanthropically, very active in investing in innovation, very active in looking at infrastructure, identifying all the issues in Puerto Rico that can be addressed: food security, agro-tech. I'm active in everything I possibly can do that I think is going to make a material impact in Puerto Rico.
Got it. So maybe we can switch gears to.
And I'd say, come visit. Come visit, come check it out. I encourage you, and reach out to me on Twitter or wherever, and let me know if you're coming down. And I look forward to connecting with everyone.
Yeah, Puerto Rico is a huge crypto hub. For someone who doesn't know, there's a lot of my friends, a lot of the big projects move there, C-level executives. So intellectually, there is an incredible collective wisdom right now, which helps to foster the development of our entire community.
Yeah, it's the biggest brain trust I'm aware of in the world. It's not in terms of the developers and the masses, but in terms of the C-level people and the founders. There are more high-level crypto people and executives in Puerto Rico than anywhere in the world that I'm aware of. More than New York City or San Francisco, as far as I can tell.
So maybe we can also talk a little bit about again, people forget that besides all of your other achievements, which is hard to even enumerate, but you're a co-founder of USDT, which is by far the world's largest stable coin, and it recently marked the passes $50 billion market cap, and more banks adopt USDT. A lot of governments are talking about creating their own stable coin. Obviously, we saw a huge battle in China right now that is happening, basically banning Binance banning miners there, and promoting their digital yuan. So what would you say, how would that impact the global arena? What's going to happen in the future in terms of I would say some people are putting Bitcoin and stable coins as almost rivals, which I don't actually think that they are mutually exclusive. So I want to hear your stance on this.
In 2013, before there were stable coins, you have to remember what it was like. If you had your money in one exchange and you wanted to send it to another exchange, you could do that with Bitcoin. You couldn't do that with US dollars. To do that at the time, you had to withdraw your dollars to your bank account, rewire it, and it would be a week or two process. Also, and that's for a lot of people that are traders. If you want to go short, long, there's a lot of utility there. And also keep in mind, there weren't that many Bitcoin users back then. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the idea of Bitcoin being used for money remittance and financial inclusion and these sorts of things. But the reality is, most of the world wanted US dollars. And so I would present to a lot of people, I said, hey, what if we use Bitcoin's technology to move US dollars around? It's a great way to introduce, and in their USD wallet, they'll be able to see Bitcoin as an option. It'll be great for trading. I think that this is a thing that could unlock tremendous value within our ecosystem. And everyone thought it was a horrible idea. Everyone's like, what? We don't like fiat. Why would we want dollars? I'm like, well, but it doesn't. And everyone's like, I don't get it. Bad idea, Brock. I'm like, I'm happy doing things, whether you agree or not. And so we went ahead and we started Tether, Reeve Collins, Craig Sellers, Phil Potter, Giancarlo. It was about eight or nine of us were the principal steward. William Quigley, John Yantis. It was basically two groups. It was me and my partners and the Bitfinex team. Mm-hmm. And so we went ahead and built Tether, and we launched it. And wow, kind of extraordinary how big it's become. You know, $150 billion a day in trading volume, $60 trillion a year. It's the most traded cryptocurrency by far. And governments around the world, like you said, like China, looked at what we've done and said, we're going to create the Chinese digital yuan utilizing this concept, designed the way we want it. They want it, that is. And we think that we can rival and challenge the US dollar's reserve status in the world with this. I mean, this is geopolitically a more immediate challenge to the world than Bitcoin is, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of like the current main event. And I certainly don't think that stable coins are bad for Bitcoin. I believe the opposite. I believe that stable coins and Tether in particular is what drove liquidity and adoption and all sorts of things. I think that, you know, Bitcoin would probably be $3,000 today if it weren't for stable coins. I think it's unlocked, you know, it's 10x'd the industry and its current potential. And I also think that there's a role for both. You know, like El Salvador, I think that, you know, our central banks and these things are like our checking accounts. These are our current accounts for the foreseeable future. That's how we're still going to buy things. And, you know, Bitcoin is really replacing the traditional savings account. And that combined with things like DeFi, you know, are really going to accelerate, you know, the migration away from a bank as a savings account into an open banking system, you know, where you got your Bitcoin and you got your DeFi, and what a wonderful thing. We're going to create ubiquitous financial inclusion in the world. There's 4 to 4.5 billion people that are on or underbanked. You know, we're going to address that problem. You know, the idea that we'll be able to give out micro loans to people, you know, because that's not profitable for banks. Amazing. We'll be able to lift 1 billion people out of poverty relatively quickly. You know, so I think it's great. Yeah, no, Tether's been interesting. Also, Mastercoin was another cool project we did where we invented the ICO. You know, that's obviously been a cool one. Blockchain Capital, really exciting. We're started the first, you know, sort of venture fund in the space. Well, I'm no longer running or a partner in the fund day to day. I stopped in the middle of our third fund, but they just closed their fifth fund, $300 million fund led by Visa and PayPal. The first time PayPal has ever been an LP in a fund. You know, so my old firm is where they basically, you know, are figuring out what they're going to do, which is great. And it looks like Blockchain Capital will be a top 3 most successful fund of all time. You know, having been, you know, big investors in Coinbase and Kraken and BitGo and other, you know, everything you can kind of think of. Obviously, that's doing very well. The stable coins at Blockchain Capital, we also invented the security token with BCAP. I'm also a founding advisor and investor in T0. And, you know, through that came Spice, and out of that then became securitized as a currency.
So basically, if someone doesn't know, that's the first tokenized fund in the world, actually, right? So
I really only want the jobs that no one else is willing or able to do, which is why you'll see I'm typically involved in the pioneering of new concepts. And I'm more like a doula for creation. I'm there and, you know, help with the inception, the birth, and then I normally run off to go focus on the next issue. And then I come back a couple of years later to see how things are going, and sometimes some tweaking, sometimes like, oh God, what have you done? And there were definitely with Tether, there were some of those moments where I'm like, oh, what are you guys doing? But, you know, whenever you're doing something really, really big and really, really well, you know, haters gonna hate. And so it's part of the process. If people are throwing stones at you, and a lot of times that's actually an affirmation that you're doing something right. But every time, always then take a step back and look at yourself and evaluate, am I doing it right? You know, what can I do better? And, but just understand when you're doing things well, you're going to get a lot of flack from people. It's part of the process.
Yeah, exactly. And as we can mention openly, as you touch this topic, like with EOS for a foundation, like, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar like raise, and yes, there were some bumps along the way, and there were some challenges, but it's still like it proves, like it shows exactly how, you know, like you, Daniel, I remember, and some other, like, you know, team members, like, you know, actually made it happen. Like the rest is history, right? Now there can be people who don't like EOS. There are people who are using it, but it happens, right? And a lot of your projects, like, you know, is what I see. You're first in anything you do, so which is impressive. Like that you. So I was very excited about this interview. So I want to also ask you, like, what is on your radar right now? So any other like groundbreaking technologies or any other projects that you're looking at right now, and maybe you can give us some insights.
Yeah, so I'm very involved with media right now. I started my life in the entertainment business as a child actor, but I'm very involved in media, you know, because I'm very concerned by some of what we've seen around censorship, freedom of speech in America, the First Amendment. The First Amendment isn't the first. I mean, it's not the third or the fifth. It's the first for a reason. Our voice, you know, our ability to speak is so fundamental to liberty, to freedom, to sovereignty, that I'm engaged in media. And then media also as a medium to deliver messages. And so from the entertainment to the news, and how we interact and how we share information, think social. Got a lot of stuff going on in that area. Very active in the, you know, call it the metaverse. And as the metaverse is being born, all of that sort of stuff, and, you know, a bunch of different things. Like if I went through all the projects, remember I have like 200 companies or projects I'm involved in. I spin a lot of plates, and ultimately because I'm not, you know, the CEO, and most of the time I'm often the man behind the curtain. You know, I'm not seeking any credit. You know, if you know, you know, and if you don't, like, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to help you. Like, that's kind of my modus operandi, or my MO. And politics obviously is core to what I'm doing. How do we avoid a revolutionary event, and how do we make this as much as possible an evolutionary event? You know, all for one and all for all. How do we make this a scenario where the old and the wind can, you know, the old and the new can win together? You know, it's human nature to fear that which you don't understand. Like, that's normal. And how do you conquer fear? You conquer fear with knowledge. And so I try to spend a lot of time with, you know, our incumbent institutions, you know, and important people, because they can be won over. It just takes someone that can help them understand, right? You just got to help them see the light. And so, you know, I do a lot of that work, and have for a very long time in this space. Again, DeFi is super interesting. Just the back to that open banking system. These are the main things in the industry that I'm focused on. The metaverse, you know, which is, you know, NFTs are connected to that, but it's much bigger than NFTs. You know, the metaverse and all that entails. Yeah, I'm in banking. Remember, I've started 3 banks, and so there's some banking stuff that's there. And then
when you mentioned that you started 3 banks, maybe you can elaborate a little bit, like, you know, because we're talking about digital banks, right? So
yeah, so in 2013, I risked for the industry, and that is that almost no big states could open up a bank account.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Bank banked Coinbase at the time. Zappo at the time had proper banking. Now, everyone else that was operating was like opening up a bank and, you know, using their personal bank account to make transfers, or not telling the bank exactly what they were doing, which under US law is a felony. It's considered wire fraud. Now, they didn't know that. You know, they were, you know, just kind of being naive and being entrepreneurial and like, just make it work. But I recognize this, and I'm like, oh God, like, they can come arrest, you know, almost everyone working in the industry right now.
Yeah.
You know, that's running a business in the space. I'm like, well, if the banks don't want to bank us, not because they weren't threatened by us, it's that we didn't have enough money to matter. And we represented a lot of risk, from a compliance perspective. So why would they want to bank us? Like, there's no upside and a lot of downside, basically. And so I'm like, well, if they don't want to bank us, I guess I better go figure out how to get into the banking business. And that's a club that you don't just easily enter, right? The banking cabal is like, it's not like there's just open seats. And so I went and started work. I had a friend of mine at Houlihan Lokey helped me start looking for distressed banks. And so I was looking for state chartered banks, federally chartered banks, credit union co-ops, trying to understand how it all works. And this is ultimately what led me to Puerto Rico for my second time in my life. Eventually, I'm like, there's got to be a back door into the U.S. banking system. I'm like, what about the territories, Guam, Samoa, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico? And so I got a hold of someone in Puerto Rico, and I found out under this rule of Act 273, you can create what's called an IFE, or an international financial entity, which effectively allows you to do everything that a bank can do without being a bank and without FDIC oversight. And so I talked to someone, found out, I'm like, has anyone done this before? The guy's like, nope. I said, I'm on a plane. And so we set up the first crypto bank in the world in 2014 in Puerto Rico called Noble Bank. And so I've been involved in the creation of a couple of others. The one you can go check out now is Medici, like the old Medici family from Italy. And so you can go to medici.bank. And so my friend Prince Lorenzo de Medici brought him in because, the Medici family started the first bank. I figured as a storyteller, we should bring them back to start the last bank and kick off the digital renaissance. And so as I think you can tell, I also have fun with story. I'm a storyteller. So I enjoy that aspect of all of this as well.
No, this is incredible, and and this is why I'm excited to go with the flow with the story. Like for a lot of folks, I just prepare like every question. With you, it's just impossible to collect all your achievements into one. So we're trying to just unwrap it like slowly. And so you also have several. You've invested in several funds, but you also run several investment firms, right? So maybe you can say a few words about your investment approach. What if there's some people who are now like projects who are excited to pitch you their project? What they should be talking about to get your attention?
Remember, making money is not my objective. If someone is pitching me on a way to make a bunch of money, that doesn't work with me. I don't even consider any of my money, my crypto, my whatever, to really be mine, right? I'm in possession of it, but I can't take it with me. I view myself as just a steward or a custodian of it. You see, I view money as a form of stored energy, and it's just what consensus is forming around which thing do we, our shared belief system. Is it Bitcoin? Is it dollars? Is it whatever? Is it gold? I just view it as a form of stored energy, and energy wants to flow like water. It's a current, see? And we're just meant to be good conductors of it, to keep things flowing. And so from my perspective, it's all about purpose. What is your intention? What is your mission? What are you hoping to accomplish? And if you're not trying to do something that's never been done before, then it's probably not interesting to me. I'm interested in the hard jobs. I'm not interested in being the fast follower. There are some exceptions to every rule, but I'm not trying to go do something. Maybe if it's being in a new country that it hasn't been done before, you want to go do something in El Salvador right now. That's interesting to me, right? Am I willing to invest in seeing this experiment in El Salvador be successful? Yeah, I am. I'm interested in impact. I measure my success in life not by what I have, but by the positive impact I have in the world. And so I'm a little different than your typical, investor. I'm, all purpose and mission. And, outside of our space, I'm interested in the things that are going to change the world. I'm interested in space projects. I'm interested in healthcare. I'm interested in technology as a tool for positive transformation. And I'm also interested in developing skills. So if if there's some really interesting thing, I might be interested in working with you. Really just I'm paying tuition to learn, to expand my understanding of things. And so that's what motivates me. And it's ultimately people. Life is too short. I only invest and work with people I want to hang out with.
That makes sense. So you already built your own tribe, and I know that's why also Puerto Rico. I mean, I would say it's revolving around also the fact that you are there, a lot of other brilliant people are there, and it attracts more brilliant people. This is you created this energy there that attracts this smart capital, but not just just not money, but it's also just people who are willing to share knowledge, right, and educate others, right? So that's why I totally understand where you're coming from. It's a mission-driven projects, right, and it's something that will truly deem to change the world. That is, if I understood it correctly, what excites you at the moment, right? So I know that you're right now in the middle of a lot of things as always, right? So I want to ask you also two questions. It's one thing if you right now at this moment where you are, if you were to define what is your purpose in life and what actually drives you, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so where I'm at in that process, it's change, and through that process of saving the world. I'm not alone. Teamwork makes this collective dream work, but we truly do live through a period of time where we are facing very real existential threats, environmentally, economically, politically, geopolitically, racially. These are very challenging times, but remember, every challenge is also an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I choose to do everything I possibly can with the time and the resources I've been given and the skills to do as much as I possibly can. I believe that this is not an accurate number. This is just a number. The odds of being embodied, the odds of being born is probably 1 in 600 billion. By impossible odds, we're here. And thank you to all of our ancestors. Wow. To be able to continually through this miracle of life, create a scenario by which I'm present, and not here to judge the past either. It's through through this history, they've been stepping stones. And the question is to learn from it and recognize what mistakes not to make. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so the more we can look back, the better we can see forward. And I'm just here to do everything I possibly can in service till my last breath, or until it's done.
Yeah, and that's I'm into that, right? So in terms of the last question, I would say what is the trend? If you would leave us obviously I'm not going to ask you the price prediction, but what as a visionary, what trend do you foresee for let's say this year and maybe the next year that will be important to watch?
Well, I mean, again, if you're not playing around with the DeFi, I mean, the idea that our industry is now able to produce yield at a time where we're looking at negative or sub 1% interest rates, this is what's going to drive adoption. Everybody's looking for yield. DeFi is such a game changer for the industry. But again, be careful, custodian, non-custodian, not your keys, not your coin, I've never encouraged anyone to invest in anything. I only encourage you to invest in yourself, to play around with a small amount of money to learn so that you can make informed decisions for yourself. And so, I think that's really the thing that for anyone into crypto, if you haven't taken the time to learn, go clear your calendar and go figure this out, because it's also producing the income where you can, potentially live off of your Bitcoin without having to sell any of your Bitcoin, depending upon your circumstances. The last year and a half for a lot of people have been very, very difficult. For some of us, it's been very good, but for the most part, it's been very hard. The NFT space is really interesting as well. Not so much as an investment, but back to the Medici family. When you're blessed with abundance, one of the things that we do typically, as in the process, when you're blessed with of the arts. This is art and culture. Without art and culture, we're lost as a society, as a civil. And so one of the things that happens when you come into wealth is you normally, become a patron of the arts. And, as modern, Renaissance men, right, that use technology as a tool for transformation, there's really amazing stuff that's happening in our space. And, I encourage all of us to be supporters of it, right? Assume you're going to lose all your money. But hopefully you've bought something that, you've supported the arts, you've supported a creative person that typically does not have abundance. They typically live in a place of scarcity. And, you have the ability to support that. That message is going to resonate with less people. But perhaps over time, that message will be more profound. And the other thing too is, one of the things we've learned through this pandemic is, that we can work from anywhere. So I encourage you to, to think about where you are, and are you where you want to be? Are you exactly where you want to be? If not, you're free. Go live your best life. You're allowed.
No, and I really appreciate it. I think it's a really important message that you're sending, and with your own example, you set this example to that being digital nomad, it's already a norm right now. Like where we're locked and people were working from home before was something outstanding. Now I look where I live right now in New York, right? I've seen a huge exodus, like where people move to Puerto Rico, to Texas, to Miami, to other places in the world, explore the world, and they work from home, and now it is accepted. It is largely accepted in big corporations, even like they encourage people to do that. So I think, this is definitely a new trend. And I think people who will invest their free time that they would otherwise spend on traveling, right, 1 or 2 hours to learn about DeFi and NFTs and other digital transformations, that would be impressive. And I encourage them to follow your story, and also I will share all your social media links to make sure people will learn about your incredible achievements so far. And for some reason, I have confidence that in the coming years you're gonna deliver more incredible things, and that's what I'm wishing you sincerely, Brock. I really appreciate the courage. I really appreciate the zeal. I appreciate your example, and I hope that more and more people like you will appear in our space and just accelerate the digital transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So good to see you.